We need a social media revolution to make revolution possible, and Divine is my contribution to that. I had this idea that Vine was important. I had this idea that you should be able to access these old videos and that people should be able to watch them. They should be able to access them. And I was thinking, I'm going to bring this back. And as I was bringing back these things, and I didn't know what it was going to be called. I was, called it Open Vine or Noster Vine, or I had all these different names for it. And I said, well, we should bring this back. We should think about it. We should have the access to this information. And I was building it as a personal project where I said, I want this thing. I want to watch these funny videos. I want to be able to subscribe to them. I want to see them. And maybe I'll make some more. I'll make a couple new ones. And last summer I started hacking on this thing. I started putting it together and I said, maybe I can put together the pieces and maybe I can build it. And I went to Jack and I said, a little bit embarrassed. I'm like, I know that you kind of shut down Vine, and how do you feel about it? And I think I'm going to work on this. And we're part of this hacker collective called And Other Stuff. We're trying to fix the mistakes of the past internet, fix the mistakes of social media, but we don't know what we were doing. I mean, we didn't know what we were doing when we made Twitter, and had no idea that it would be successful. We didn't know what we were doing when we were doing Odeo, the company that was the first commercial podcasting company. Had no idea that podcasting would become such a big deal. I said to Jack and the other folks in the Hackers Collective, I'm like, let's try this thing and we'll see what happens. And I kept seeing AI videos and I kept being really annoyed by AI videos. And I kept watching the videos and I felt tricked by the videos. And then the algorithm behind it was then showing me more AI videos because I was getting upset about being tricked by these AI videos. And I went to my friend Nathan, who was a human rights activist. He's a technologist. He's a programmer who works with human rights activists. He works with journalists. And Nathan had built this technology that was a way of verifying that what a journalist saw, what an activist saw was real, that something wasn't faked on their camera. And it was for very serious things. It was for, massacres and other kinds of news where you wanted to know, is this news real? And it's called proof mode. And it uses a lot of complicated technology, but it basically uses math and cryptography to verify that something really happened. And it was really shot on a camera. And so I said, well, what if I added this proof mode thing, this human rights tech for journalists into this relatively superficial and fun app around social media so that we could watch these videos? And I said, I'm just going to throw it in there. I'm just going to try it out there, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to put it out there. And it's going to be an example for how we can do the internet better, an example for social media where you own your own identity and your followers, where you get a say over the algorithms, where if you want to leave our platform, you can, where you get an idea of what the rules are. We have social media apps today where you have less say in the governance than a bowling league, and that's crazy. And so I thought, well, I'll just build this app and I'll put it out there. And I went to Lisbon and this conference web summit, and I sat down with Cory Doctorow, who's an amazing activist, and he has just written this book called Enshittification. And I interviewed Cory on the stage at Web Summit, and we talked about everything that was wrong. Like, how did the world get shitty? Like, how did we get the world of doom scrolling? How did we get the world in which we had created social media to empower people, and yet it had been used to elect Donald Trump, used to empower authoritarians? And this is exactly what we did not want when we created Twitter. But somehow it happened. And so we needed to understand that. And I spent some time understanding that, and Cory has written a lot about it, and it's called enshittification. It's the process by which power corrupts. And you build these platforms and you build walls around them, you build moats around them. These are ways in which a few companies can then give something that is sort of shared and then take undue profits and undue control. And we have this thing where, if you remember Spider-Man, which is, that with tremendous power comes tremendous responsibility. And yet what we see from the executives of the companies today is no responsibility. This is why there's the book Careless People, which talks about Mark Zuckerberg and the way in which he just does not care about the users. And he's just relentlessly driven at increasing engagement. And I said, I could build Divine as an example of a different model, an example of a system that can't be enshittified, an example of a system that won't be controlled in that way. As an example of a system where who I am does not matter. Where we don't have to have a debate about Rabble's politics, where we don't have to have a debate about whether or not Rabble is making some decision on this. And so we built Divine not just as a way of bringing back the old Vines or as a system by which we can watch social media without AI slop, but as a system that solves the fundamental problem that we have with social media, which is that it is not social enough. It is not owned and controlled by the users itself. And so Divine is built on open protocols and open source technology. You can set up your own servers. You can choose your own algorithms. You can choose your own system of moderation, what rules you want. If you want a system that is all AI generated content, you can take our technology and you can run a separate set of systems. Now, I'm not going to host your AI slop, but if you wanted an all AI slop thing, you could. And so what shocked me was not that I have this crazy radical vision that I've been posting it and I've been sort of thinking about how we can change the world. What blew me away was that when we announced this, all of a sudden, a whole lot of people said, yeah, I miss Vine. Yeah, I want someone who's going to fight against AI slop. I want someone who's not going to just say AI is our future and you should just accept it and you should be happy about it. I want someone who's not going to be like, I'm just going to sneak in that meta AI thing. I'm just going to sneak in that Snora thing. Maybe we could have a world where we just had influencers that weren't people. And so we put that out there and almost immediately people joined. We had 10,000 people join our test flight in a few hours. We had 150,000 people come to our website that first day. And I had a bit of an oh shit moment because all of a sudden I went from this idea of like, oh, we're just going to come out and like put it out in the world and a few people will be interested and like people are really, really interested in obscure things on the internet. They're going to come in and do this. And instead, what happened is we had a world of people say they want to do it. And not just the normal hacker folks, not the people who understood about the Fediverse and like got why Blue Sky was different than Threads, but we had these people who were Vine stars. I had Lele Pons sending me direct messages saying, hey, when can I join? And we sat down and I had a call with her and she said, don't rush this out. She said, do it right. And we started talking to the other Viners and we said, we had an idea and they told us how much Vine mattered to them and how important it was to do it right. And then we had a generation of younger people who'd grown up after Vine had shut down, who'd watched all of these compilations of Vines and they'd said, this is so important to me. This humor, this idea, these looping videos, the way in which you do it works. And so I actually brought together a bigger team because it was a one-person project at the time. And I said, okay, I'm gonna do this. And I went back to Jack, who would, he has a day job. He runs Block. And I said, I think we're gonna try and do this real. And we brought in a bunch of people who showed up. A huge community of volunteers helped. It's an open source project, so anyone can contribute. And we worked really hard for the last 4 months. And now we are able to say it's good enough that we can bring out there. There's lots of bugs. There's lots of things I'm embarrassed about. There's lots of places in which it will break, but it is also open source, which means you're no longer expecting me to make the decisions for you. I remember sitting down with Jack Dorsey in 2017 and Jack asked me, hey, should I delete Donald Trump's account? I was like, gosh, that's an impossible question because if you delete it because he's saying these horrible things, then you then have the debate about everybody else you delete. And because Twitter was a company, it was owned by the stock market, it was traded publicly, that there would be a shareholder revolt and they would remove him as CEO. We all thought, okay, he's the CEO, he's the founder, he should be able to make the decision. And we got mad at this one person. But I don't want a better Mark Zuckerberg. I want a better Elon Musk. I don't want a better Jack Dorsey. I want a world in which a community of people can come together and solve our problems together, and a single person, a single competent hacker isn't the person who is going to make the decisions for everyone else. Like, I don't want to live in a dictatorship. I don't want to live in a dictatorship in society. I don't want to live in a dictatorship in the world of social media that we create. And so we built Divine on fundamentally different principles. We built it to fix the mistakes of social media that we had before. And we will make many mistakes. I will make many mistakes. And I'm not asking you to trust me. Like, that's the entire point, is we should stop putting our trust in sort of inspiring leaders. And the irony is that I'm sitting here giving this sort of manifesto rant. But the reality is that internet is the internet, and in social media and society, these are things that should be for all of us, and that we should all have a say in them. And that the things that we are building are, yes, it harkens back to an earlier era of social media. Yes, they're Vines. Yes, they're hilariously funny. Some of them are off color and some of them are going to be too much, and we're going to remove them from our servers. But that whole point is, if you think I'm removing too much, take the software, take the servers and set it up and run it yourself, because you could have different ideas. And that's the way society works. Like, if you don't like my club, start another club. If you don't like the way I decorate my house, don't come over for dinner. And yet we have this thing in this social media where we have these small corporations that are incredibly tightly held. We live in a world where there shouldn't be just a dozen people who make these decisions. The world of people who found social media companies is too small. Kevin Systrom, who founded Instagram, was our intern at Twitter. Like, that is crazy. I am so excited that there are people interested in Divine. I'm so excited there are people who want to bring it back. And I want everyone to know that the value in it, the importance of it, has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with the fact that we're getting funding from Jack Dorsey. It has nothing to do with the fact that 20 years ago, I was sitting in the room when Twitter was created, and it has nothing to do with the fact that we got back those old videos. They're funny. I love them. It's so wonderful. But the real value is the fact that the Viners want to come back. They want to join this thing. They want to participate. We have these people whose careers, whose idea that they could have a voice without a gatekeeper came from Vine. That was the first moment in which you can make really easy social video that can connect to millions of people. And we're bringing that back, but we're bringing it back in a way so that it can't be shut down the next time. So if I give up, if I get tired, or I make terrible decisions, then all of you have the resources and the tools to keep it going for yourselves. That's the future I want to live in. It doesn't solve society's problems, but it does give us the tools by which we can solve them. It was incredibly inspired by the Zapatistas Subcomandante Marcos. He's an incredible poet and a leader and thinker. And in the late 1990s, he wrote this essay about how we need to build social media. We need to build a media communication system to build another world. I like to paraphrase his call to action, which is, we need a social media revolution to make revolution possible. And Divine is my contribution to that.